The Galactic Council chamber stretched endlessly, its walls formed from shimmering material that pulsed with energy, reflecting the thoughts and emotions of the beings present. Towering figures, some encased in living matter, others composed entirely of light, floated or stood around a vast circular table. In the center of the room, a single artifact hovered, a crystalline sphere radiating a soft, golden glow. It was the marker of fate, an object of immeasurable power, used only when the Council made decisions that would alter the course of galactic history. Today was one such day. The murmurs among the representatives created a low hum that reverberated through the chamber, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of dialects, tonal pulses, and telepathic emissions. The topic of discussion was a planet classified as an unremarkable, orbiting an average star in an isolated spiral arm of the galaxy. Its inhabitants, primitive by galactic standards, were unaware of life beyond their atmosphere, yet the marker had deemed them significant. A seat had been reserved for them within the Council, an act that defied logic, precedent, and even prophecy. A being of immense stature, covered in iridescent scales that shimmered with every shift of its massive body, slammed a clawed hand against the surface of the table. This is absurd. The humans are barely sapient by our standards. They war amongst themselves, destroy their own ecosystems, and have yet to even breach their own gravity well with any significant success. How can we justify granting them a seat when they have not even achieved interstellar travel? The creature's voice was a deep, guttural growl, each word carrying the weight of millennia of experience. Across from it, a spectral entity, its form shifting between gaseous and solid states, responded in a voice like a whisper carried by the wind. The marker has spoken. It has never been wrong before. We must trust its wisdom, even if we do not yet understand its reasoning. Others spoke in turn, their concerns ranging from skepticism to outright hostility at the notion of reserving a seat for a species that had never set foot beyond their own moon. A cybernetic diplomat, its form composed of both aorganic matter and intricate synthetic components, brought up historical records. In the last 10,000 cycles, the marker has only activated 5 times for new species. Each time, the civilization in question went on to become one of the major pillars of the Galactic Council. The humans may seem insignificant now, but if the marker has chosen them, they must possess something beyond our current understanding. A new voice cut through the debate, calm but firm. Perhaps it is not about what they are now but what they will become. The speaker was an Elden of a species revered for their wisdom, their lifespans stretching across epochs. The Elden stood slowly, his elongated form moving with deliberate grace. We have seen this before. When they were uplifted, they were seen as nothing more than scavengers. Now they lead entire fleets. When they were discovered, they were wandering nomads with no permanent settlements, and yet they now control the largest trade networks in existence. The marker does not choose based on what we see, it chooses based on what is to come. The room fell into a heavy silence as the weight of the words settled over the gathered council. The opposition remained, their doubts still lingering, but none could argue against the marker's past accuracy. Slowly, reluctantly, nods and gestures of assent rippled through the assembly. The final vote was cast, the decision made. A seat would be reserved for the species known as humanity, waiting for the day they reached the stars and claimed their rightful place among the council. As the session concluded, a few council members remained behind, watching as the marker dimmed, its purpose fulfilled for now. One of them, a tall being with piercing golden eyes, turned to the Elden. Tell me, do you truly believe the humans will rise to meet this destiny? The Elden's expression was unreadable, his eyes fixed on the slowly rotating image of Earth suspended in the center of the chamber. Belief is irrelevant. The marker does not choose wrongly. The only question that remains is whether we are prepared for what humanity will bring when they arrive. The avian diplomat considered this for a long moment before finally turning away. The council had spoken. Humanity's seat was waiting. The future had been set in motion, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council chamber was a masterpiece of engineering, a vast and ancient hall where the rulers and diplomats of thousands of civilizations gathered to shape the fate of the known universe. It was here that the most crucial decisions of interstellar politics were made, where empires rose and fell, and where, for centuries, a single seat had remained empty. A seat reserved for a species that had never even known of its existence. Grand Arbiter of the Confederation stood at the center of the room, his elongated form bathed in the soft glow of holographic projections. Around him, a murmuring audience of delegates filled the chamber, their bioluminescent robes, armored plates, aor shells marking the diverse nature of the galactic community. 4 amber eyes swept across the assembly before he spoke. We convene today to discuss the matter of the reserved seat. The words sent a ripple through the room, murmurs of uncertainty rising among the representatives. This was a topic many had wished to ignore for as long as possible. A large, reptilian figure, High Warden of the Dominion, let out a low growl, his crimson scales catching the dim light. This seat has remained empty for over 10,000 cycles. We have held it open because of a decision made before any of us were born. But the species it was meant for still does not know we exist. I see no reason to continue this charade. An diplomat, speaker of the collective, clicked her mandibles in agitation. And yet, the marker of fate is never wrong. It deemed the humans worthy before they had even achieved sentience. To ignore this would be to defy the natural course of the universe. At that moment, the holographic projection in the center of the room flickered, shifting to display Earth. The planet rotated slowly, its continents and oceans glowing softly against the darkness of space. Alongside it, a series of projections detailed humanity's technological progress, their rapid industrialization, and, most importantly, the first signals they had begun sending into space. Counselor of the Dominion leaned forward, his hands interlaced. We were always told to wait, to hold this seat open until the time was right, until they reached the stars. That time is approaching faster than we anticipated. The murmurs grew louder, many voices speaking at once. Some in agreement, others in opposition. A sudden shift in the projection drew the chamber into silence. A new data stream appeared, showing humanity's recent advancements in space exploration. Their first crude satellites had long since evolved into advanced telescopes and planetary probes. They had sent their own kind beyond their world, built space stations, and now, their first experimental warp theories were emerging. They were coming faster than anyone had predicted. Clasped his hands behind his back, his expression unreadable. Our predecessors saw something in them. They made a decision, one that we have upheld for generations. The humans will claim their place among the stars. The only question is whether we welcome them or fear them. Slammed a clawed hand against the table, the impact sending a tremor through the chamber. Fear them? Why would we fear them? They are young, fragile, and disorganized. They lack unity. Their histories are filled with war against their own kind. They are a violent, chaotic species. Turned her many eyes toward him. Violence does not preclude greatness. Many of us have warred among ourselves before finding unity. They are no different. Let out a low snarl but said nothing. From the edge of the room, a soft, melodic voice cut through the tension. You fear them because you do not understand them. Counselor of the, a species known for their deep connection to the cosmic flow, stepped forward. Her crystalline eyes shimmered as she gazed upon the projection of Earth. You see their wars and their struggles, but you fail to see their resilience, their capacity for growth. They are not like other species. They do not merely survive, they adapt. They endure. The chamber fell silent as her words lingered in the air. The Galactic Council had always relied on predictions, on calculations and probabilities. But humanity had defied predictions at every turn. They should not have advanced this quickly. They should not have risen from the ashes of countless conflicts to build something greater. And yet, they had. turned to the gathered delegates. The time for waiting is over. The humans will reach us soon, whether we are ready or not. The seat we have held open will no longer be an abstract promise, but a reality. We must decide, do we tell them the truth, that they have always been meant to stand among us, or do we let them stumble upon us, and prepared for what they will find? A tense silence filled the chamber as the delegates exchanged glances. Some looked uncertain, others resolute. The weight of their decision pressed upon them. For thousands of years, Earth's seat had remained empty. A promise written in the stars, waiting for the day humanity would rise to claim it. And now, as their ships reached further into the void, as their voices began to whisper into the darkness, the universe was listening. The command bridge of the Galactic Council's primary observation station hovered in tense silence, its occupants focused on the massive holographic display that dominated the central chamber. A swirling projection of space revealed a single, seemingly insignificant blue planet, Earth. Around it, dozens of data streams pulsed with analysis, tracking everything from global energy consumption to political conflicts, technological advancements, and even individual human achievements. For centuries, the Council had watched this world, recording its slow but steady progression, waiting for the moment when its inhabitants would finally break free from their terrestrial chains and step into the stars. That moment was approaching faster than anticipated. High Lord of the Kryn Dominion, a species known for their meticulous attention to strategic planning, leaned forward, his 6 eyes narrowing as he scanned the latest projections. Their advancements in artificial intelligence and space travel have accelerated exponentially in the last century, he muttered, his voice a series of clicking sounds translated seamlessly by the station's communication systems. By our estimates, they should have still been a century away from achieving interstellar travel, yet these numbers suggest they are only decades away. Some factions on their planet are already experimenting with warp theories beyond what we anticipated. A reptilian counselor from the coalition let out a slow exhale, the bioluminescent frills along his neck pulsing with unease. This is problematic. The seat we reserved for them was meant to be symbolic, something to be filled when the time was right. If they arrive sooner than expected, before we have properly prepared them, or ourselves, the political ramifications could be significant. His tail flicked in agitation, the idea of an unprepared species suddenly thrust into galactic politics, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. From the observation deck, a soft but commanding voice cut through the discussion. We knew this day would come, said Counselor of the, her long, translucent robes shifting as she walked toward the central display. Her species, ancient and wise, had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. She gazed at the image of Earth with an expression of both admiration and concern. We reserved their seat before they even knew of our existence because the marker of fate deemed it necessary. It has never been wrong before. She turned her deep violet eyes to the rest of the room, her presence carrying the weight of millennia of wisdom. Perhaps it is not they who are unprepared. Perhaps it is us. A heavy silence settled over the room. The thought had lingered in the back of many minds but had never been spoken aloud. For all their technological advancements and vast knowledge, the galactic community had always struggled with the unpredictable. Humanity, with its rapid adaptability, its resilience, its refusal to yield even in the face of impossible odds, this was a factor that no calculation could fully account for. A holographic model shifted, now displaying humanity's history of warfare, innovation, survival against insurmountable odds. The sheer level of conflict and strife they had endured and overcome was staggering, even by the standards of civilizations. Yet they had also achieved art, philosophy, compassion, and unity in movements that defied their chaotic nature. It was a contradiction the Council had struggled to understand for centuries. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, drawing their attention. A young technician from the Myran species, a humanoid with neural tendrils that connected directly to the station's data core, turned from her console, her face pale. We have a development, she announced, her voice trembling slightly. Humanity has just detected an anomaly in their solar system, one of our old observational probes. They are beginning to question whether they are alone. A ripple of tension spread through the room. They had anticipated this moment, but not so soon. If the humans discovered undeniable proof of extraterrestrial life before the Council had established proper diplomatic channels, the situation could spiral out of control. Let out a low growl. This is too soon. If they realize we have been watching them, they may react with hostility. However, smiled slightly, her expression unreadable. Or they may do what they always do, adapt. The council chamber erupted into discussions, some arguing for immediate intervention, others for continued observation. But no matter the course of action, when fact was becoming undeniable, the humans were coming. Their seat was waiting, and the galaxy was about to change forever. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. Not the silence of contemplation, but of tension, an unspoken realization that the course of history was shifting beneath their feet. Representatives from thousands of species sat in their designated seats, their forms illuminated by the holographic projections that filled the West Chamber. And at the center of it all, the reserved seat stood empty no longer. A single human stood before them, his presence radiating a quiet confidence that unsettled even the most seasoned diplomats. Ambassador Elias Vance had been chosen to represent humanity, though he knew well that he had not come as an equal, not yet. Humanity had only just begun its journey among the stars, had only recently discovered that they were not alone in the universe. And yet, he had been called here, to the most powerful assembly in existence, to claim a place that had been waiting for his kind since before they had even left their caves. Elias looked out at the alien representatives, their varied forms ranging from towering reptilian figures to gelatinous beings suspended in containment fields, from to ethereal entities that barely seemed to exist in the physical plane. Every one of them was watching him, analyzing his every movement, his every word. Some with curiosity, others with hostility, and a few with something that almost resembled reverence. Grand Arbiter, the presiding authority of the council, rose from his elevated podium, his amber eyes unreadable. His species, had been among the oldest in the council, their influence spanning millennia. He had watched civilizations rise and fall, but never had he witnessed something quite like this. Ambassador Vance, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. You stand before this council as the representative of a species that was granted a place among us before it had even touched the stars. Do you understand the significance of this moment? Elias met the arbiter's gaze without flinching. I understand that my people have inherited a legacy we never asked for. That a decision was made long ago, by beings we never knew existed, to grant us a seat at this table before we even understood what the stars were. His voice was steady, but his mind was racing. He knew what was at stake. Humanity had arrived at this moment not through conquest, not through diplomacy, but through fate, an ancient decision written into the very laws of the Council before Earth's first civilizations had even formed. A low, guttural growl echoed through the chamber as High Warden of the Dominion leaned forward, his form radiating barely restrained disdain. And yet, the question remains, do you deserve it? His sharp, predatory eyes narrowed. You are young. Your kind has barely stepped beyond your own world. You war among yourselves. You are reckless and predictable. What makes you worthy of a seat among the great civilizations of this galaxy? Elias took a slow breath. He had expected this, had prepared for it. We didn't come here seeking worthiness, he said evenly. We didn't ask for this seat, but it was given to us, and now we're here to claim it. You say we are reckless, and perhaps we are. You say we are violent, and history would agree with you. But if we are so unworthy, why was this decision made? Why was our place in this council decided before we even knew of its existence? A murmur spread through the chamber. Even those who opposed humanity's inclusion could not ignore the ancient ruling, the prophecy etched into the very foundation of the council's laws. The reserved seat was not a political decision, it was something olden, something deeper, and no one truly understood why it had been made. The collective clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Perhaps the decision was made because your species possesses something the others do not, she mused. Your history is filled with conflict, yet you continue to rise. You endure. You adapt. Perhaps that is why the marker of fate chose you. The inclined her head, her crystalline eyes shimmering. Or perhaps the question is not whether they deserve this seat, but whether we are ready to accept them. Silence. Heavy. Tense. The weight of the moment settled over the assembly like a cosmic force pressing down on them all. The reserved seat, for the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, was no longer empty. Exhaled slowly, then turned to Elias. The decision was made long ago. We cannot change it. But know this, Ambassador Vance, your people now bear a great responsibility. This seat is not a gift, it is a burden. You will be held to the highest standards, scrutinized in ways no other species has been. Every action humanity takes will reflect upon this council. Elias nodded. We wouldn't have it any other way. A moment passed. Then another. And then, the arbiter raised his voice to the chamber. By the authority of the Galactic Council, let it be recorded that the humans of Earth have officially taken their place among us. A wave of acknowledgement spread through the assembly, some reluctant, some approving. But the decision was made. The reserved seat was filled. Elias took his first step toward it, placing his hand on the armrest. Humanity had not asked for this. They had not sought it. But now, they had claimed it. And as he looked around at the vast assembly of alien civilizations, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning.